Welcome to episode 67, Vendor Risk Management at R2, where we explore how third-party oversight becomes more rigorous as assurance expectations rise. At the R2 level, vendors and partners are no longer peripheral. They are part of your security posture and must be governed as extensions of your own environment. The difference between good and weak programs often lies in visibility and accountability, who the vendors are, what data they touch, and how their performance affects your risk. Vendor oversight at this level must be systematic, evidence-driven, and continuous. It requires formal contracts, monitored boundaries, and auditable documentation. By the end of this episode, you will see how R2 organizations integrate suppliers into their assurance ecosystem, turning vendor management from paperwork into measurable protection that scales with complexity and confidence. Vendor risk intensifies at R2 because the certification covers environments where critical operations or regulated data flow through external providers. As organizations expand, they rely on cloud platforms, managed services, and specialty vendors for everything from infrastructure to analytics. Each new connection adds convenience, but also exposure. Data can be lost, delayed, or mishandled outside direct control. R2 expects the same maturity with vendors that you apply internally: clear ownership, validated assurances, and consistent monitoring. This means no vendor should handle protected information without documented evaluation and ongoing review. A minor gap in a third-party control can undermine your entire certification. Treating vendors as integral members of your control environment is not optional. It is essential for proving comprehensive risk governance. Vendor inventory drives the whole program by identifying who you depend on and how critical they are. Begin by listing every third-party relationship, from large hosting providers to niche consultants, and map what data or functions each touches. Classify vendors by both criticality, how much business impact would result if they failed, and sensitivity, what type of data they access or store. For example, a payroll processor handling employee social security numbers rates high for both, while a landscaping contractor may not. Keep this inventory dynamic, tied to procurement and offboarding workflows, so no vendor slips through unnoticed. When assessors review R2 evidence, they expect to see this list, its classification logic, and ownership fields. A living inventory turns abstract supplier risk into measurable oversight. Tiering suppliers by impact and exposure brings order to monitoring and resource allocation. Divide vendors into tiers, often high, medium, and low, based on service criticality, data sensitivity, and integration depth. High-tier suppliers require detailed due diligence, contractual security clauses, and periodic assessments. Medium-tier vendors receive lighter reviews, while low-tier ones follow basic policy checks. For instance, a cloud hosting provider with production workloads sits at the top tier, while a training content vendor might be lower. Each tier has defined control expectations and review cadences. This structured approach prevents blanket requirements that overwhelm small vendors while ensuring high-impact relationships get the scrutiny they deserve. Tiering also simplifies communication with assessors, who can see at a glance how you proportion oversight to risk. Due diligence, attestations, and questionnaires are the first line of vendor assurance. Before engagement, require suppliers to complete a security questionnaire aligned to recognized frameworks such as the HITRUST CSF, ISO 2701, or SOC 2. Validate their claims by reviewing documentation like penetration test reports, policy summaries, and risk assessments. Keep an evidence log showing review dates, reviewer names, and any follow-up actions. For existing vendors, refresh due diligence annually or after major service changes. Automate tracking where possible to prevent missed renewals. The goal is not to bury vendors in forms, but to understand whether their controls meet your baseline. When assessors ask how you know a provider is secure, your due diligence files should answer clearly, with current attestations, recorded evaluations, and documented decisions. Business associate agreements and embedded security clauses transform expectations into enforceable commitments. For vendors handling protected health information, BAs are legally required and must specify permissible uses, safeguards, and breach notification obligations. Even for non-healthcare data, similar clauses set standards for encryption, retention, subcontractor approval, and evidence access. Include explicit references to security responsibilities, incident reporting timelines, and audit rights. Each contract should match the vendor's risk tier. Higher tiers demand tighter language and stricter remedies. When assessors review contracts under R2, they look for proof that obligations exist, not just intentions. Well-written agreements anchor your oversight program and serve as permanent evidence of due diligence turned into binding control. Shared responsibility matrices and boundaries clarify who handles what within each relationship. These matrices show which party manages, implements, and verifies each control domain, from access management to logging. A strong matrix prevents misunderstandings, like assuming a cloud provider handles data classification when it does not. Create a standard template for these matrices and complete one for each critical vendor. Review and update them annually or after service changes. During assessments, these documents show assessors that you understand the split of duties and that nothing falls into a gray zone. Shared responsibility clarity converts collaboration into controlled assurance rather than mutual assumptions. Inheritance verification with provider evidence closes the loop between what vendors promise and what you rely on. If you inherit controls from a provider, such as physical security or network protection, collect their certification letters, SOC2 reports, or HITRUST validations, and confirm they cover your service region and timeframe. Map their evidence to your requirements and note any residual responsibilities you retain. Store these proofs in a dedicated vendor evidence library tied to your inventory. When assessors ask how you verified a provider's claims, show the mapping along with dates and reviewer notes. Inheritance saves effort only when verified and documented. Otherwise, it becomes blind trust, which R2 explicitly discourages. Continuous monitoring cadence and triggers ensure vendor oversight remains active between assessments. High-tier vendors require scheduled reviews, quarterly or semi-annual, to confirm status and check for changes in scope, leadership, or incidents. Monitoring may include automated feeds from risk intelligence platforms, alerts from security rating services, or manual check-ins requesting updated attestations. Triggers for ad hoc reviews include service changes, public breaches, or contract renewals. Record monitoring events in a centralized log showing what was checked and what action followed. Continuous visibility replaces reactive panic with predictable rhythm, demonstrating that vendor risk management is part of daily governance, not an annual scramble. Subcontractor visibility and onward transfers extend the chain of trust beyond your direct suppliers. Vendors often rely on their own providers, creating hidden dependencies. Require disclosure of subcontractors that process or store your data, and ensure the same safeguards apply downstream. Include contractual flow-down clauses mandating equivalent security obligations and breach notification rules. Maintain a register of known subcontractors and link it to each primary vendor in your inventory. During R2 assessments, this register shows that you control not only first-tier risk, but also the extended ecosystem. Oversight without depth is illusion. Real assurance tracks every hand that touches your data. Data return, deletion, and exit planning protect information when relationships end. Contracts and procedures must state how data will be returned or securely destroyed, which party performs the action, and how completion is verified. Obtain certificates of destruction or confirmations of data wipe for critical vendors. Plan exit steps before you need them, ensuring data portability, encryption, and format compatibility. Without clear exit controls, lingering data can become a breach waiting to happen. Assessors at the R2 level often request examples of completed vendor exits as evidence. Demonstrating secure disengagement proves your governance extends beyond active contracts. It covers the full data lifecycle. Service levels, audit rights, and remedies ensure vendors stay accountable when performance falters. Define measurable service levels for security events, vulnerability remediation, and compliance reporting. Include the right to audit or request evidence when reasonable concerns arise, and specify remedies or penalties for repeated failures. These provisions are the enforcement arm of vendor governance. Track service level performance in regular dashboards and review them with vendor contacts. When issues arise, document corrective actions and confirm completion. In R2 assessments, showing that service levels and audits are active, not theoretical, demonstrates operational control over external risk. Evidence packages for vendor management include samples, reports, and screenshots that show how oversight functions in practice. Typical contents include the vendor inventory, tiering matrix, due diligence questionnaires, contract excerpts, monitoring logs, and examples of provider certifications. Add proof of incident communication tests or exit confirmations when available. Each artifact should be dated, linked to the corresponding vendor, and stored in an organized repository. Present a short narrative that connects these artifacts to your vendor risk procedure. A well-structured evidence package tells a story of continuous attention and control, satisfying assessors without extra explanation. Risk-based oversight at scale is the essence of R2 vendor management. Build and maintain a living inventory, tier suppliers by impact, demand attestations, and anchor responsibilities in enforceable contracts. Verify inherited controls, monitor continuously, and rehearse incident and exit paths. Keep visibility into subcontractors, track metrics through dashboards, and assemble evidence that proves consistency. Mature programs treat every vendor as an extension of their own security boundary and manage them with the same discipline. When you can demonstrate that diligence with clarity and traceability, vendor oversight becomes not a burden but a competitive strength, showing partners and assessors alike that risk is recognized, shared, and controlled.